The Gi Spot. I'd hit that.
Welcome to the Gi Spot podcast. My name's Rachael Bradshaw and I'm a black belt in Jiu Jitsu.
Hello there, I'm Kaz Page and I'm a purple belt in Jiu Jitsu, and we're back.
We are back and we've had an amazing day.
You have had a very exciting day. I've had a day sitting on the bleachers feeling sad and sorry for myself, but it's been very exciting nonetheless.
We've had the amazing Josh Barnett come into Iconic Jiu Jitsu today and teach an awesome seminar to about 50 different people.
50 plus, yeah.
Yeah, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I'm very, very honoured and proud to introduce to all of our listeners today that we have the one, the only, amazing Josh Barnett in studio with us today. So welcome, Josh.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank
For
you.
joining us. So we were just talking, you've been in Australia now for a couple of days, and where are some of the places you've been travelling around thus far?
I think I've essentially hit every major city on this trip. So it started off in Melbourne at John Donahue's, and now I can't quite remember the exact order, but I know I went from there, I think, to Launceston, Tasmania, then maybe Perth, then Canberra, then Adelaide, then Darwin, then Brisbane.
Wow.
Then here, then now on my way to
I think
Sydney.
you have hit every city.
Yeah.
I reckon you've seen more of Australia than most Australians.
That's not the first time I've heard that. And
I
it sounds like that way.
haven't been to many of those places myself, and I've lived my whole entire life here. So, wow, what was the standout moment so far, do you think?
Well, it's hard to think of it in ways outside of the gyms because every stop along the way has its own really limited visibility for me.
Yeah.
So most of the time I don't really get to see much of anything. It's just the gym and the people and moving on. And so far all the seminars have been really fantastic. Everybody's been really great and really done their best. But being in the Northern Territory and getting a bit sunburnt going out fishing in the Adelaide River and stopping off at Goat Island, that was fun.
Yep.
Goat Island.
Yeah.
That sounds like a place to visit.
It's pretty special terrain up there too. It's not like anything else around that you've been.
Yeah, it's tropical, but yet it doesn't have what you would think of like it doesn't have like a jungle tree line. It's really quite open in a lot of ways. The flora there doesn't swallow you in the same way necessarily, but it could, depending on where you walk. And then, of course, don't fall in any of the water.
No, don't, definitely. And why don't you want to fall in the water, Josh?
Crocs.
Yeah.
Did you see any?
Saw 2.
Yeah.
But that's just above the water.
Yeah, that's right.
There was probably
what's lurking underneath?
hundreds as I was going through there.
Mum, Dad, the aunties and uncles are all lurking underneath.
So did you say you were fishing there? Mm-hmm. And did you catch anything?
Nope. The guy that took us out, he caught one barramundi, but otherwise the water was a bit high and they just didn't really seem to be interested in eating at the moment.
Did you get to eat the one you caught?
No, we didn't have time for that.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure he did, and I hope it came out great. I had a water buffalo burger at Goat Island, though. It was all right, and plenty of Great Northerns.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. That's you must if you're up there for sure. How many times have you been to Australia?
This is only my second. The first time I was in only Brisbane, and for roughly 5 days, maybe 6.
Yep. Okay. And what do we like
about Australia?
How would you surmise the Aussie folk?
Well, I'm not really too surprised. I mean, I've known plenty in my lifetime. So, and I've watched heaps of Aussie film, all the wild, weird, and wonderful stuff.
Crocodile Dundee.
I mean, that's more of a Hollywood film.
It is actually, yeah.
No, I mean like Dead End Drive-In or Turkey Shoot or, of course, Mad Max and all that.
Yeah.
But Razorback, Wake and Fright.
I'm just going to look over here as Matt's probably sitting there going, yeah, no, I don't know any of them.
Yeah.
and producer Matt will have seen all of them.
There is some fun, like, horror Australian movies that have
I've seen
out.
Wolf Creek. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Oh,
no,
see,
there's
I
been a
couldn't do
couple
it.
of others too that
No,
we've
couldn't do it.
come across recently.
But obviously every place has differences between the people and the locale, right? Melbourne's not like Darwin, which is not like Adelaide, which none of it's like Canberra. But overall, it's what I've come to expect. I always kind of figure Aussies are just a very similar extraction from the Anglos that ended up in America. Like, we branch off. We're both like frontier-like, driving forward, always ever adventuring and loving to do so with alcohol and big fuck all motors in our cars.
Yes.
I think the one big difference is that, you know, the settlers in America chose to want to go there.
Well, there is that, but whether you choose to or you don't, it ends up kind of the same way.
Whereas
that's
my
right, yeah.
ancestors actually
Yeah.
came over on the first flight.
Yes,
So-
I did mine. My motherfuckers were all bad.
But, cowboys and Australian outback stuff all kind of lines up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've only seen one classic Falcon this whole trip, so I'm disappointed.
Oh, no. One original Mustang or just a old
No,
Falcon?
old Falcon. Mustangs, seeing a Mustang in Australia means fuck all, because
Okay.
it's the same as we can get back home.
Yeah.
Yep.
But up to, I think it's 72, then that was a Australian designed and made Falcon for the first time.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is the XB and the XA. I think there's also the XC. But the XB GTs, like the Interceptor from Mad Max, one of my favorite cars of all time. I saw one. Saw one in Brisbane. That was cool.
You won't
Just
see
wait
many
for
of that.
Chrome Fest
Yeah,
to hit the
that's it.
Central
That-
Coast,
yeah,
and
that's
it's
it.
just that's all you see. Those
Then
kind
you
of
see a lot
cars.
of it. Then you'll see the real cars. None
Yeah.
of this modern stuff anymore. Never mind. You do like cars, though, don't you?
I love cars.
I've learned a bit about that. So I'm curious if we go back to the very start for a second. You as a young man, a little boy, because everything that I have learned about you, and I'll be honest, like, my husband's a massive fan of yours for a very long time. I've learnt about you because of him. And so then I started doing some more deep dive into you and watching podcasts, etc. and so forth. You are so fucking smart. Like, you really are. And I don't mean that disrespectfully on any level, but the information that you know about Vikings and its history, the information that you know about cars, the information that you know about whiskey, and the way you articulate and the way you speak, you're a wordsmith in almost every subject that I've watched you speak about in your podcasts. So I'm curious, that brain you don't get later in life. Like, I think you must have been born smart. How, and inquisitive and obviously curious about a number of things, and you learn a lot. How does that person become the super fighter that you become? How do you pick that path?
Everybody has their nature. So, I mean, you can go to the wildest prisons in the world and find geniuses in them. Now, what they choose to do with that, or perhaps maybe the way they're wired, means that they end up in a place like that, potentially. Or maybe you end up working in computers, or maybe you're an engineer. Maybe you're just a mechanic who then starts building his own stuff on the side because of a want or maybe even a need for that person for things that don't exist yet. And so he's a machinist, so he just goes out and starts making it anyways. And then all of a sudden he's part of a racing team, and then he's doing this, and then he's building that. And you just never really know. For me, well, I'll say, I have mechanical aptitude, but I am no engineer by any stretch of the means. And but my mom said when I was a kid, I had the same crib as my sister, who was 8 years older than me, and they reused it, as one would, but it had it set up so she couldn't get out. You didn't want the kid to escape the crib. You wanted to stay in the crib, do its time there. But I managed to somehow, she says, dismantle the crib. Like I didn't break it. I took it apart. And my mom was like, okay, that's not going to work. And as far as fighting, my dad was a fairly rough around the edges, street fighting, drag racing, drinking, guitar playing, kind of ruffian. And it just kind of came natural to me. Like fighting was something I was always drawn to. Or even as a kid, I never picked on people. I wasn't a bully, but I wasn't one to shy away from fights. And if pushed sufficiently, like fighting was just fine for me. But then seeing something like UFC showed me that there was a way, not only that I could be a fighter, but also all the cool stuff that I loved, all the pro wrestling and Street Fighter 2 and video games and martial arts movies and Bruce Lee and whatever you can think of. Now it exists. Now we can see who really is the toughest. And this could be something that you could do arguably as a career, so to speak. I mean, what that career looked like back then was very different from what one might look like now. In fact, not even remotely alike. But it did exist. You could see the outline of it. And, if you sit back and wait for anybody to create a pathway for you, well, then all that time that you waited and sat around for it to be done was time you could have been doing it yourself. And that's time you're never getting back.
Do you, in regards to everything that you just said then, it's motivational, but I was also listening to you today on the mats when you were taking the seminar, and unfortunately I have to sit in the bleachers, so I'm on the sidelines watching at the moment. And a lot of the time as you were speaking to everybody there, you were referencing mindset and you were talking about the thought process and those kind of things, as well as the physical movements that you were teaching. How important is that pathway in regards to choosing pathways, choosing whether it's down to the micro level of choosing a movement against an opponent versus big life decisions, making the conscious decision to choose to want to go forward?
You have to choose to do something no matter what. Not choosing is still a choice. Usually, there's that quote, the best thing to do in any given situation is the right thing. The next best thing to do is the wrong thing, and the worst thing to do is nothing. There is no time to wait. I mean, even if you're a counter fighter, you're still calculating you're doing things from a choice perspective of wanting something to be given towards you to then use to your advantage, trying to draw responses for your offense. But that's not waiting necessarily. That's reacting. That's actively engaging, but just instead of directly trying to attack your opponent, you're trying more to work from it's not entirely defensive, because you're not trying to just defend, you're trying to be offensive off of what they give you. In the same way in life, when you can, be active, be enforcing your will on the world around you to what scale is possible for you and what is needed. And then at times, things are going to happen that you didn't ask for, you didn't know about, you weren't going to be given a heads up on, or perhaps it's just, well, you saw in your mind's eye that it would look like this, but then as you start walking, oh, well, actually, there's more to it than this. And, in fact, there's a lot of underbrush on this trail that I never saw coming, so now I'll have to deal with that as well. It's just bringing more things in your life, and then you respond and move over. It's simply as you could say, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Yeah, you will, but you don't get to the bridge until you start taking the steps. So why would you wouldn't even know there's a bridge to cross?
Yep.
I want to find the bridge or go under it or decide to not to see it and decide, I'll float down the river instead. But either way, I will make my way, and I accept that I make my choices and that I can handle whatever life throws at me to the best of my ability. And if I can't, well, fuck it. Then I guess I'll just go from there.
I just want to pull up for 1 second. Did you notice the bridges? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Kaz imagines jiu-jitsu journeys with bridges and rivers and things. She's very visual in that way. So you spoke to her in a Kazism.
I'm having little, I don't know, firework explosions in my head going, me too.
When you were young, where did you first dip your toe? Was it in the catch wrestling?
No.
How did you get into all of this?
I saw UFC 2 on VHS tape.
Yep.
And I just said, I'm going to do this. So I wrestled in high school. I had done some judo. And then I just started figuring out, like, okay, well, if you're going to fight, then you need to be able to fight everywhere. So there was a friend who did a little bit of boxing in Miami where he was from. So, okay, he brought focus mitts to school. So we just started jacking the focus mitts. Or then I found out there was a group that did Muay Thai in this church basement down in the south part of Seattle. But also the guy that's teaching that was one of our security guards. So I would get the security guard, Sujai, to hold pads for me and teach me stuff. And then I would go on Sundays down to that place and do Kali, Eskrima, Muay Thai, self-defense stuff. And then it's like, oh, well, you're a grappler. Well, here, teach wrestling. So, okay. So then I'm adding wrestling into it, and we're screwing around and doing stuff. And then I'm watching UFCs and trying to pick up moves from watching the fights and the tapes and rewinding them and slowing them down.
And how's Mum with this decision back in all those years ago?
Well, they would have, both Mom and Dad and Grandfather. Grandfather was a lawyer. He wanted me to do that. Mm-hmm. And they all were more keen for me to do something else. And it's really not surprising, especially back then, that didn't seem like a real way to make a livelihood, really. Mm-hmm. And, most parents don't want their kids going out there and throwing their bodies into harm in one way or the other. And parents probably have a tendency to envision the worst instead of thinking that, well, I mean, look, just general life will get you, fuck you up, ruin you for things that are far less noble. Mm-hmm. So my argument to them, and the one intervention I would call it, was just getting started. And
how old are you at this point?
Well, my first fight, I was 19 years old. But prior to all that, I mean, I'm second year, I think you guys call it, or sophomore in high school. Mm-hmm. And I'm 15, going on 16, and it's like, I'm going to fight someday. So let's start building the building blocks now. Let's start thinking about it. Let's, somehow, some way, I wanted to wrestle in college or play Division I football or whatever. But whatever that was, at some point I was going to fight. That was the end goal. So grandfather on my mom's side, high-powered lawyer guy, and my dad and my mom. And, my dad was quite the fighter, but he didn't give me the same kind of leash he would have given himself as a kid. And that's fine. But it wasn't going to stop me from doing what I was going to do. I mean, hell, I played baseball a little bit as a really young kid because essentially he basically said that I asked him, somehow we got on whether or not he played baseball, or he made some comment as a kid, and I was like, oh, okay, well, what position did you play? I played first base, and I did this and I did that. Oh, okay, great. And I'm a kid. I don't know any better. Oh, maybe I'd play first base. Oh, you couldn't play first base. Whatever. And I'm just like, fuck, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that look.
I started playing baseball, and I got better and better and better. And then even as a young kid, as like an 8-year-old, I had like the 12-year-old teams asking me to come up, and fine, right? But I eventually moved away from baseball, but glad. I mean, I love playing all sports for the most part, but some a little more than others. Mm-hmm. But basically, I was going to set my path. I was going to see it through, and I would rather, at that time, fight the world than litigate it. Like, just, I didn't. The culmination of all this was, I made 2 points to which they were just like, yeah, okay, never mind. And that was, first thing I said was, look, I can always go back to school in a wheelchair. Like, there is no time limit on college. If I wanted to be a lawyer, if I wanted to do something else with my mind, as you put it, I could do it crippled. Like, there's no stop for that. And then my last point was something I will say it was basically lifted from the movie Rollerball from 1975 with James Caan. And there's a scene that I stole this. I say stole, but to be honest, it really sat with me when I saw it. And I'm debating whether I just say what I said or I say I'll say what I said, and then I'll explain what the scene is. So I just told them all flat out. I go, look, at the end of the day, you know what those lawyers and those doctors and all those CEOs and everything, and they're out there and they're making all their money and they're being all these bigwigs and they're doing all these things in their office chairs. You know what they wish they were? They wish they were me. They wish they were smashing people's faces in, bathing in blood, kicking teeth across the ring, and being the champion of the world, standing on top of defeated bodies, which they will never, ever do. They just looked at me like, fucking whatever. But in the movie, there's a scene after the first game. The whole movie opens up with, the movie starts on a game. Incredible shots. Brilliant intro. Really sets the tone. And these executives, because the world is now run by just corporations. All the countries have pretty much, after this giant war, fallen apart and corporations took over everything. And they're like, okay, there's no more wars anymore. We're not doing that shit. And we're going to run everything for you. And we decide this, and we divvy things up into energy sector, power, entertainment, or transportation, or whatever. And like, they still have places like America, and or I guess they've got they still have cities. You have Tokyo, you have Houston, you have Madrid, and you have Japanese people and Spanish, and all this exists, but it's this big corporate world now. And after the first game, they're in the locker room, all the players, and there's, getting massaged down and drinking whatever, and these execs all come in from Energy, who have all been watching the team, and Houston's the energy city, so they all come in and seeing all the players, and they're asking them stuff like, what are you drinking there? It's like, just fruit juice, man. We're healthy and all this. And executive pops this little canister open, and he offers these pills to this player, and he's like, take this, And so this player, he takes a pill. It's kind of, the general gist is it's like Soma, somewhat from Brave New World. And he said, take that and you'll have sweet dreams. And, what are you going to dream about, or whatever, something like that. And he goes, you know what, you're going to dream you're an executive. That's what he says. You're going to be in the offices. You're going to be pulling the levers. You're going to be pushing the buttons and deciding who does this and who does that and how the world works. But you know what? And the character's name is Moon Pie, of all things. He goes, you know what, Moon Pie? You know what executives dream about? They dream they were rollerballers, and they smash faces. So I lifted that whole sentiment, and I turned it into my little speech as to why I was going to do what I was going to do. And to be honest, I didn't say it just to be shocking or to be provocative in any particular way. I actually do believe that. Yeah. I don't believe that... I don't believe there's anything Elon Musk could ever do in the world that would give him the same feeling as it gives another person when they have met someone in combat and defeated them. I'm not talking about what the end result of what his action may be. I mean, look, if he builds rockets and we go to Mars, and the one launches and caught back the toothpick, he's doing amazing stuff. Like, I will never make a Starlink. I'll never do things that are going to be civilizationally useful or detrimental, right? That's not the scale I'm working on. But I truly believe that there is something completely different of when you go in there, and you shouldn't think about it necessarily as putting your life on the line. I mean, you're not intentionally trying to kill each other necessarily, but that to me is like how do I put it? That is like being in like your highest state, being in that kind of thing.
It's raw. There's something uniquely just back to the core basics of humans in that. Matt says that in some other stuff that we're doing, and it's, and he's talking more so forth from a male perspective, but it's that ability to push back. It's that ability to allow yourself to let everything go. Everything else in your life is controlled. And I'm not saying that fighting isn't controlled, but there's that raw impact. There's that feeling of the hits. There's the feeling of giving the hits. There is no other career path that would experience that.
I don't know how you could feel more alive. For me, it always felt like going to the ring was having chains dropped off, allowed to be who I could really be.
Mm-hmm. So you've started the career. You decide that you're going to become a professional fighter. But there is these amazing other interests in your world. Where does the interest in Vikings come from?
Just history. History,
But
genealogy.
there's a lot of other history. There's all sorts of other
Viking
things.
shit is kind of cool, but also being that I'm so Northern European, that Vikings had a big play in terms of, even my own ancestry to a degree, but the ancestry of so many people from these different populations all around the world. So I just really connected with it in a way, and it felt more natural to me than anything else, as far as not just the history of Vikings, but the mythology and the religious aspects and all of that, the way of life kind of things. But I'm also quite knowledgeable about samurai and other warrior cultures, and somewhat about medieval Europe. I'm not like a Romans and different things. Just combat in general. I've always been drawn to military and combat stuff.
I was telling Willow today, so our 15-year-old daughter was on the mats for the seminar today, and I was explaining to her about your like for Vikings, and she turned around and she goes, "No wonder, he looks like one." And then she went, "Shh, don't tell him." I said, "Oh, no, that's okay."
I don't know.
I think he gets it, honey. And I saw you in the film clip with the band that you like, so I explained to her that that's okay. Like, I'm sure it's not an insult; it's fine.
Yeah, fair enough.
Actually, that's a question I had for you. Music is a big part of your life, and I was searching for, you did a podcast while in Australia a few days ago or a week ago with a guy in Adelaide.
Yeah.
That was hilarious to listen to. Shout out to him.
Sav, yeah.
Yeah. It was very interesting hearing him get progressively more intoxicated through through the actual podcast.
I mean, I ended up getting pretty shit-faced by all of it at the end of the day. But yeah, he was way worse
you weren't
off.
slurring your words. It wasn't even halfway through and he was already slurring. But while I was looking for that, I came across playlists that you have put together and things like that. So music, talk to us about that.
It makes the blood move. You know, it makes you feel things. It has immense beauty, immense passion, immense intensity. It's just another aspect of art, and art should move the soul. Art should contain beauty and horror and everything in between.
Yeah, you and Rachel's husband, Grant, have very unique tastes in music, very similar tastes in music.
Music means
too.
a lot to him, and therefore music means a lot to Iconic. He's always got music playing, and it changes from night to night. You know, some nights he has put on like Viking type music, other nights he's put on, heavy metal music, and you saw his arm today with all the different bands that he loves and things like that. But it's such a huge array from one spectrum to the other of music that he loves across the board. Who do you love? What's your favorite bands?
Well, my favorite bands, I would say like Bolt Thrower, Amon Amarth, Queens of the Stone Age, Watain.
Yep. I've heard of
Goat
Queens
Whore.
of the Stone Age.
Okay, I love a band called The Bronx from the U.S., from L.A. I love Depeche Mode. I mean, it really runs the gamut. I like a ton of music. Although modern pop music is some of the worst music ever created by an algorithm. Don't tell me Taylor Swift wrote anything. I mean, she might write her lyrics, maybe, but no. She's a manufactured singing simulacrum of a star, of an artist.
And massive at the same time.
I mean, look, why wouldn't they be when they're working algorithmically to try and make sure to capture things based on, well, if you repeat this chorus enough times, if you do this, if you just use the same progressions and melody, you'll create a hook. And I like the last 87,000 songs, but with zero, in my opinion, depth underneath it. You know, maybe it's, you can call it old man screaming at cloud or whatever, but I really do think if you took music and art seriously and you were to do a comparison of the product and the process from even just say the 50s until now, you would find it's not like you don't find pop music. It's not like pop music is a new thing that has just erupted out of nowhere and now you know it's this thing that you can yell about. It goes as old. I mean, look, what was popular in the 18th century obviously would be a lot different, but I'm sticking with something like the 50s because of radio and the business of marketing music through what you would call like multimedia or more expansive media footprints. It just sucks. Like you can go ahead and compare Beyonce lyrics to Led Zeppelin. You could do this to that. It is just trash. It's just trash all around. And it's so funny thinking about how many people are singing songs about stuff that absolutely have zero to do with their lives whatsoever. Not to say that like every Cannibal Corpse lyric song is true to life, because clearly the fuck it ain't. But it's
we'll have to take your word for that because I've not heard their lyrics.
They are, well, they're pretty awful. But I mean, in terms of like they're horrific. But but what I'm getting at is you have people that are sincerely interested in the topic of horror, of gruesome, horrific things and the expression thereof it, backed by people that have spent their whole lives being able to play at speeds and technical capabilities that most people will never have, knowing, or at least to begin with, that they'll never be Taylor Swift sized in terms of their output and their reach. And then you have your Taylor Swifts, who are these, not a new idea to have people like Aretha Franklin wasn't necessarily writing a whole bunch of her music, but she I mean, you're not auto-tuning Aretha Franklin. No. You're not overproducing Aretha Franklin. That ain't happening. It's not even needed. But with a Taylor Swift, it's this, you find the thing that can be the representative there of it, that has a charisma and a look and an aesthetic, and then you maximize it, build everything around it, and create like this computational way of creating the craft to what it's going to dispense to the world that, you know, based on research that you've done and other things, will land. Did
you like Queen or David Bowie?
Queen and David Bowie are great.
Okay, cool. They're my two favorites.
I mean, even if, let's say, I don't like Queen and I don't like David Bowie, I wouldn't say that they're bad musicians. I mean, Taylor Swift compared to David Bowie? Fuck on. Come on. Like, well, it's just my point is it's not even to particularly rag on Taylor Swift, because she is good at what she does. Yeah. And she is not, at the same time, you would miss the forest for the trees in that she is not a normal person. If you'd have taken some other beautiful girl who could sing and tried, it wouldn't be the same thing. Like, Taylor Swift is a force of nature, not just because the machine has told you that she is and created that. It has, but she's capable of being it.
Yes. Yep. And she's savvy, and she's a businesswoman, and she knows what she wants, and she's determined to achieve it.
But as far as music is concerned,
different
stinks.
Story. Yep.
Absolutely trash.
Whereas Bowie was in a world of his own, and Queen and the way they brought their music together and the way they investigated how they could bring so many different elements to a song, that was a journey.
The one thing I'll say about Queen and David Bowie, I'll say two things. One, you can watch how they have these progressions throughout their careers of becoming this and that, and they're always true to who they are, even if they might look back and be like, I fucking hated that album. But they all, felt within the realm of who they were as David Bowie and Queen. But the other thing is, God, they would just sing some weird ass fucking shit sometimes.
Yeah, I know. But I liked it.
What are you talking about? And I don't mean Ziggy Stardust. I mean, that was like kind of a concept thing around it, but which is kind of dark too, you know. We're break his hands and all this. It's like, ooh, okay, he's talking about arrogance and hubris and the crowd getting to their peak, and then at their apex they drop down. Now they want to destroy what they love. All these different things, right? But he would sing these wacky ass fucking songs. Or I remember there's this one, I like it, but the song is like, why does this exist? There's a Queen song called Ogre Battle, and I'm like, what? Why?
We'll have to put that up for everybody too. Sorry.
Like, what are you going on about? Or even then, even like the cover of what is that? Something of the World, where it's got like weird metallic robots crushing people. You're like, the fuck?
That's one of my favorites.
No, it's a really, really, really famous album, but it's just what? Why?
Because it just shows you the inside of their minds. It's like, and I can relate.
Well,
There's a lot of extra stuff.
Maybe it's like if you grew up watching the Monkees, and then you give them a chance to make a movie, and you're like,
oh,
okay, head.
Hello.
I love the Monkees. Yeah, I think they're great.
Me too. I'm a 72 baby, so this is all my world.
77.
See, I wish I could join the conversation. I didn't discover music until later on because my dad was a punter. Yeah. So all we had on the radio my whole entire life growing up was the horse racing.
That's not music.
No, we didn't have music in our home. And if I did have music, it was Michael Jackson. It was the Bangles.
Sure.
It was
I didn't mind the Bangles.
Yep. And it was Debbie Gibson. They were the three that I listened to on repeat. and Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Oh, I do
loved,
them. Yeah,
love that.
Fan of them. So I want to ask, if fighting didn't work, what was the backup plan?
I didn't have one.
Go and do law as a cripple.
No, I mean, I did.
In a wheelchair.
I worked in computers and IT.
What did you do?
Well, I worked on a hospital intranet for nurses and doctors to be able to reference all their different...
So for those that don't know, intranet is an internal networking system within a corporation, as opposed to internet, which allows you to go out to the big world.
Right, this was non-accessible from outside the interior network.
Yeah.
Converted all these different documents on different procedural stuff or whatever, or you were working on pages for the intranet stuff, or doing just regular general IT, like some doctor screwed his computer up because he put games on it he wasn't supposed to, or rolling out antivirus, or blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I worked in IT, but corporate life never suited me, and I wasn't that driven to sit in front of a computer for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours every day long. I mean, I can work somewhat in that fashion, but it's just not really for me. And working for other people, I can do it as well, especially depending on the person. But I'm really more my own boss. So I don't know perhaps military. I don't know.
It's not a bad life.
I don't think so.
Yep, we've been down that path for 10 years. So, whiskey. Where did the love of that come from?
His Viking heritage.
Yeah.
Parents drank whiskey.
Both, mum and dad?
Yeah, okay. But I think really my love of it came from living in Japan and being around Japanese whiskey and being able to drink it and enjoying it, but then thinking like, oh, this was special that I got to drink this or to have this opportunity. Sorry, I've been cramping a little bit ever since after leaving lunch. But I just kind of started falling in love with it. It was just like a thing where I felt like if I'm going to drink, I do enjoy beers, but there's something about whiskey that I really, really enjoy. I like that it can be done to turn you into a shit-faced, obnoxious asshole in a quick way, or you can really take your time with it. I like the kind of the regalness, and then with that, it always felt like it had something attached to it that was not only, it's got that manly image, but really deeper than that, it's got lineage behind it. Whiskey is something that is often generational. That is where it has been. Families will have whiskeys. There's so many different houses, like John Walker or Macallan or whatever. I mean, these were started by families. Now, they may all be bought up by LVMH or other big multinational corporations.
Yeah, but they started somewhere, right?
Correct. And often some of these people are still involved with the lines of whiskey. I love that it's something you can't rush. It takes not just technical know-how. You really need to know what you're doing, and you need to understand how to manipulate the stock and what you're doing with this yeast, and knowing all these little idiosyncrasies that you'll never get unless you're actually distilling whiskey.
I heard you talking on a podcast about it, and you made a reference about the corn. And there was a section where you were smoking the corn, and there was another section where you were roasting the corn, and then you made the comment that you could eat the corn at the end of it. Why is corn in whiskey?
Well, you can make spirits from a lot of things, but whiskey is made from grains, cereal grains.
Okay.
Corn just happened to be something that was available, and at some point somebody figured, what the fuck would happen if I added a bunch of sugar to this or whatever, or got some yeast in there and got some aerobic, anaerobic activity and fermentation and all this stuff going on. What happens? What does that taste like? Turns out we like it. So for what we do, we make a bourbon, so it's got to be at least 51% corn by law.
So hang on, bourbon and whiskey and scotch.
They're all whiskey.
Okay, so everything's whiskey, right? Why do you then say whiskey or you say bourbon?
Bourbon is just, I'm being specific. Okay. So whiskey can be made with corn. It can be made with oats. Could be made with arguably rice.
Barley?
Yeah, of course. Okay. That would be, most scotch is made just from barley.
Okay.
Yeah. It can be made with wheat.
But what defines it as bourbon then?
Bourbon is minimum 51% corn in the mash bill.
Okay.
And it has to be aged in a new American oak barrel.
Yeah.
And it cannot be distilled over 160 proof, I believe, and it cannot be barreled at more than 120.
So there's
that knocks me on my ass.
Very specific parameters about what you need to do. You've got your own whiskey line, and tell us a bit about that. What's it called? How would one go about buying it? Is it imported to Australia? All of those sorts of things.
It's called Warbringer. That is our base whiskey, which is a mesquite smoked bourbon, 75% corn, 25% malted rye, aged in a Pedro Jimenez sherry cask to finish it. Or finished, I should say, in a Pedro Jimenez sherry cask. It's aged in new American oak. It's a bourbon. It is very smoky, big, bold flavors. But if you listen to that podcast with me and Sav, he goes, well, this is sweet too, and it's this and it's that. And yes, I'm telling you, I'm not going to tell you that everyone's going to love it because it is so big and smoky, but it has a lot of uniqueness to it, and a really great mouthfeel and big voluptuous flavors.
And if they want it to be more smoky, add ice or water. And if they want it to be less smoky, let it sit for about 5 or 6 minutes before you drink.
Correct.
I learn.
No, you can't get it in Australia. When would you? I have no idea. For one, we're a small distillery.
Yeah.
So as I've said many a time on podcasts, there's a good chance if you've ever bought any of it in the years that I've been associated with the brand, because I think it started in 2017 or 18, and then I came on in 2019.
You're part owner now of this distillery, aren't you?
I have some ownership, yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing with it is, like I was saying, if you had purchased any particular bottles, especially if they're Warmaster editions, which is the ones that I came on and started building, which are a single barrel product, even the Warbringers you could have had, I either distilled it, did the mash bill, did the fermentation, or milled the grains, or put the bottle on it, put the label on it, filled it, whatever, or all of that. I've been a part of that process at times. So we are really a small batch, handmade distillery to a degree. And with that means we just don't have product to get everywhere we'd like to. But then on top of that, every country has, when it comes to things like, well, what you would consider a vice, there's always restriction. If you want to bring cigars in, there's going to be restrictions on that. Same with booze. I mean, it could be something as specific as just having to do mounds of paperwork saying you are who you are and this is what you're doing. And then what the taxes are going to, tariffs and different things will be on it. But it can also be something that you wouldn't think about. Like Europe is a 700 mil or 70 centiliter bottle. We're 750.
Okay. Yep.
And now I think, I'd have to look this up, but I think they dropped this requirement. But it used to be like, oh yeah, you can't send a 750 mil bottle to Europe. Well, what if I fill my 750 mil bottle to 700? Well, it still says 750 on the, so you need new labels, you need new this, maybe. It's like, fuck, okay.
So your whole production process then gets doubled.
Right.
For probably not the revenue in return.
Correct.
Okay. So can we go back a step though? You're in Japan and you're being introduced to a whole new world of whiskey, because you've obviously had whiskey before you've started traveling Japan and going to Japan. What was it about whiskey in Japan that got you so curious in expanding on flavour profiles and driving that side of this?
The whiskey I grew up with was not like of the highest top shelf stuff. It wasn't all bargain basement per se, but it was a lot of stuff that was being used to mix whiskey cokes and things like that. For me, in Japan, now I'm drinking the whiskey straight, either on ice or then neat, and getting to play with it as itself and treating the spirit as sufficient and then some in all levels, and not needing a mixer and not wanting one, and learning to be on that journey with it and allow it to show what it is to you in that moment, and for you to have that whiskey as a part of the moment you're experiencing there at that place in that time, and that music maybe that may be playing on that playlist you put together to listen to beforehand.
Everything about that process comes back to what, I see about you as being such a mindful person. It seems like you are that across everything you do. Is there anything where you just go, fuck it, I'm just in for the fun and that's it, see you later?
Sure.
Like?
I couldn't really.
Barrow 1000?
What's that?
Barrow 1000?
The Baja 1000?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, but I mean, sometimes you don't have the ability to affect much. You just gotta go. That's it. You just gotta go. Even fighting some ways like that. Like I'm gonna prep. I'm gonna do this, but just like just let me go out there and fucking go. Come on, let's just fight.
Yeah, and that's the fun side of it.
I was going to ask you, if we backtrack a little bit to young Josh, when was
young Josh?
Well,
so old now.
Younger, little Josh.
Trust me, I feel old.
You're not the oldest at the table.
No. Actually, it was funny today, and I'm going to segue for a second, because there was a time about 3/4 into the seminar where you talked a lot more rather than getting us to get straight back into moving. There was just a moment where you I don't know if you did this on purpose or what, but you allowed us to just sit and just listen to you for a little bit. And but then when you were like, okay, let's go 1, 2, and it was like everybody had been sitting for about 5 minutes or so. Getting up was really hard. I was like, oh, okay, we're going to get back into this now. What was your very first fight? Can you talk us through that?
What do you mean by fight?
Well,
in a ring, in a match, or on the street?
I don't mean at school with the bully or anything like that, but actually planned. There's a date.
On winter vacation, 19 years old, from university, got a call from an old wrestling coach, and he said, "Hey, I know you're training. I know you've been doing this and all that. Would you want to come and fight on this card coming up. They had an opening pop open, and they said if you'd want to come and fight. I said, okay.
Where were you, sorry? Where is this location at this point in time?
University was at the University of Montana, and I'm born and raised in Seattle, Washington. So I was back home in Seattle. And AMC Pancrase would run their own fights in Kirkland, Washington, which was on the east side across Lake Washington. And Matt Hume was the head grappling and fight coach there, along with the founder, Harushi Manishi, who was the head striking coach. And so they had guys that they fought in Pancrase, they'd fought in Shuto, they were fighting pro fights around the world, mostly in Japan, but they also held pro fight cards in Hawaii. So anyhow, my old coach, Kevin, he's just like, well, hey, you want to, there's a possibility to fight. So I go, well, who is it? It's this guy, Chris Charnos. I'm like, oh yeah, I know who he is. He had already fought pro against like Jerry Bolander and other guys. And I'm like, yeah, I'll fight him. When is it? And I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but it was in 11 days. I'm like,
oh, shit.
Okay, I'll see you there. That was it. I went and connected back with that old martial arts coach that I spoke about from high school, who was running the Muay Thai in the church basement stuff and doing the Kali and the Skrima, and we figured out we did whatever we could do, and then I just showed up. And I remember sitting in line talking to one of the other contestants, and he's from a different school, and he was from a place up north in Everett, Charlie Pearson's. And he's like, oh, hey, man, where are you from? What are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm really from Ballard, Washington, or Ballard in Seattle, but I'm here on vacation out at Montana and all this. And he's like, oh, yeah, where do you train? I just said, church basements. I mean, at the time, I was in Montana, I was training with Jim Harrison, rest in peace, who's an incredible fighter and just an amazing father figure and man, at his Bushido-kan karate. And we're doing kickboxing, boxing, his karate stuff and self-defense, and then we're doing judo, and I'm teaching like grappling once a week, and we spar full on and everything. Like, we're putting it all together the best as we can, but we're fighting straight out.
Yep.
And they're tough son of a bitches there. And then there's, of course, always Sensei Harrison. It's about one of the toughest men there ever was. So, but this guy doesn't know that. He's like, well, that's not a school that I've ever heard of. And there's not really any MMA schools so much to speak of as it is. And of course, I'm like, yeah, church basements. He's like, well, who are you fighting? And like, Chris Charnos is like, okay.
Good luck.
It's going to be quick.
Yeah. And funny enough, the martial artist guy, Edwin Romarosa, that I was training with just up the hill from me in Ballard, who ran the church basement thing in the south of Seattle, he actually knew who Chris was because they trained Kali and Eskrima under the same Sunny Umpad group, and he also knew him because Chris had trained, I guess it was, I don't know if Jesse was calling it JKD or not, but Jesse Glover was Bruce Lee's first student. And Chris Charnos had trained under Jesse, so had Edwin had taken some of Jesse's clinics and sessions and different stuff like that. Of course, funny enough, I have another association to Bruce Lee, and that is the guy who really got me into martial arts as a pathway to train and to make it a part of my life was my first football coach in high school, Fred Sato, who is a part of, there's a group, I call them the group of four. You have Bruce Lee, Jesse Glover, Taki Kimura, Fred Sato. And so Fred Sato was a super high-level judoka who started the Seattle Judo Dojo, the first person to teach Bruce Lee grappling. And you can go look in like Taki Kimura's.
And he was your football coach?
Yeah, and he got me into judo.
Okay.
Hey, go to this place. I'm trying to... oh, man, why am I forgetting the name of the old judo dojo? Anyways, I think it's still there. And go train under John Mackey and Bert Shadler. John Shadler and Bert Mackey. Like, go train with them. They're great. Yep. So I did. Yeah, and...
Did you know any of this at that time? Like, did you know who these people were and the connection?
Well, I knew that Fred Sato had trained under trained with alongside Bruce Lee. Like they'd all trained together. Like we all knew that. It was like, oh yeah, coach, you can do the 1-inch punch. And but this, Fred Sato would be 60 some years old and he could do a flagpole.
Oh man.
He could put the pin on the bottom of the bench machine on the little thing and he'd just crank it out for reps.
Yep.
Stronger than hell. But he was the one who really got me moving in this direction. As a freshman in high school, first year. And so this all comes back around.
Sorry.
And it's like, yeah, I'm going to fight Chris Charnos. And Chris has no idea who I am. He doesn't know my association to this, to that. And, yeah, we meet in the ring. I land a few strikes, whatever. I catch his foot, take him down, jump on his back immediately, didn't get my other hook in, had my sleeper on, and fell off underneath him. And then he drove down, it dropped onto a toe hold, which I didn't even know at that time. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at him, and I'm like, well, all I can think of is I'm kicking at his elbow and flaring it out so it can't be dropped in like this.
Yeah.
Eventually, I work my way free, turn, scoot out, catch him in a front choke, and finish it standing up, back him up into the ropes, and until he completely passes out with like foam coming out of his mouth and everything.
Wow.
In 2 minutes, and then everyone's like, whoa, okay, who the fuck is this kid?
From the church.
Yeah, and Matt.
You're 19 at this point.
Matt Hume goes, hey, we want you to come back and fight in the summer.
Duh.
That's how it all started.
I was going to say, it sounds like you had some amazing role models in your life that put you on the path, so to speak. So
I have.
Yeah.
Very fortunate to have the people that I have in my life.
And some of these people were coaches, school teachers, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're there if you allow yourself to be open to it. And the thing was, I would always give whatever that, you could call it like the cheapest thing that I could give was my sweat equity and my focus, and I would give you that. But
you've also never forgotten them through the years.
No, well, and how could I? Because they're a part of...
a lot do.
Who... They don't.
No, but you would think that they do.
Yeah, they don't. You don't forget these people. They don't forget at all. They might try to diminish their role. They might try to make it more about themselves. They don't forget. They know exactly who they were. They know what it was to have them in their lives, and it's just a very sad state of affairs to try and diminish the reality of what these people meant to you. And I mean, and look, if we're really honest about it, even people that were awful to you make a good impression in terms of where you're going to go and who you're going to be.
Yeah. Or who you're not going to be.
That too. Mm-hmm. But for me, I say there's no way for me to forget. You could wipe my mind of who any of these people were, and yet everything I do is still informed by them. And I always look at it as a flame that you keep alight and you keep moving down throughout the ages. And that also includes the instructors of my instructors and so on and so forth. So they didn't come to who they were by themselves in a vacuum either. These things all traveled through all these different pathways and eventually led to them, and then to them to me, and from me to mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's powerful and it's lineage, and we've talked about that many a time, that we don't just, whatever it is, whatever path you're in, whatever work you're in, whatever, you don't come to it raw. You don't come to it new. You don't usually, to be the best, you don't come to it on your own. And it's important to understand that and to bring those people along for the journey, no matter how many generations ago they were. So, traveling overseas, you've been to a number of countries. You've fought in a number of countries. Talk us through some of that. We know Japan. China, what was China like?
I never competed there. I just went there. I brought an athlete over to go and compete in China.
Okay.
And that was me being a manager and a coach. So I set up this whole thing. So I got my fighter, before she retired, Alyssa Garcia, this fight in Japan for Deep. But the way the contract was set up, we were given all the money up front, but that means we have to use that money to do lodging, to do travel, to do just a lump sum. Here's what you'll get to fight. Now, there you go.
Oh, wow.
Get here.
Okay.
Or I should say that money would be given to us by the end. Yeah, by the end. Anyways, but this would cover But yeah, you had to make that money cover everything.
Yep.
So then I managed to create a connection. I have a connection in China for other stuff, and he had some opportunity to get my athlete into an MMA fight over there. So, okay. So I'll set up this MMA fight. You'll make this money from this, and then I'll ship you down to Thailand to train at our Thai boxing school under Santien Noi, and you'll stay there for X amount of time. Then I'll fly you back from Thailand to Japan, and you'll stay with these people and train with them. And then I'll come over with Victor Henry, who's got a title, or it wasn't a title fight at this one, but he's got a fight, the main event on this card, and you will then get paid after this fight, and then through all this is all put together, you'll make some money, but you'll also get all your training covered, and I'd figured out how to plot all of her travel routes and her lodging and all this. And that was just it. We just put it all together, fly to Shanghai, she fights, wins her fight in the second round by armbar, boom, off to Thailand to train with Santien Noi, then flying her to Japan and keeping in touch with her the whole time through WhatsApp and different things and Facebook Messenger, and then coming back around, meeting her in Japan, cornering her, and then she wins by left high kick to the neck, knocks her out.
Oh, ouch! So how many years were you as a fighter before you started becoming a coach?
Probably about 4 or 5, about 5 maybe, to a degree. But not really a super heavy, serious coach until maybe I was about 24.
Right.
Okay, so not long, like 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, why?
Because my thought process was, once these things have been given to you, when you're capable of giving them back to others, you do so.
Okay.
And I become part of that chain, part of that fire that helped stoke the blaze inside me. You then take that and deliver it to others. And that's just the way I am. That's the way it just came natural to me, and it felt right.
Did you find it hard finding the time between coaching and also still being a professional fighter?
Yeah, but my approach was, it's coaching alongside.
Okay.
Now, if I had my own thing, of course, then it's like I'm not really coaching while I'm getting ready for my fight. But otherwise, it's I'm doing it, so you have to do it too.
Yeah.
And while I'm not quite in the same position as I used to be to do that kind of stuff, those that trained with me in those earlier days, or even within those that have been training with me for longer than maybe 6 years, definitely if you trained with me 10 years ago, whatever I said, it was like, yeah, not only did I do it, I probably did it more and with more intensity and possibly faster and more reps than you did.
Yeah.
Because my point was, I'm not just talking the talk, I'm walking the walk. And people, and there's plenty of times where I've told people, like, you're not even doing it, you're not even going through what I did. I'm not saying this is easy, because it isn't, and I'm not saying that that you should feel some sort of shame or way of diminished any kind of diminished opinion of what you did in comparison. But I'm telling you, this gets worse to make you even better if possible.
Yep.
So I don't want to. You're not going to find me feeling very bad for you.
Suck it up, Nancy. Get on with it.
And of course, you coming up at the era and the time that you did in the early days, you were blazing those paths for the people after you. It wouldn't have been easy.
No, but my team has the mentality in a lot of ways that I did, and that is, look, if we're out here to fight, is it Muay Thai? Is it this? Is it that? We're on this pathway until, where we get situated as an MMA fighter, that we start building. And then even then, it's like, we're going to fight here, there. We're going to go to Russia. We're going to go to Japan. We're going to what rules? Like, we don't care. We don't care. Like, an organization, small, just opened up in Japan. they've had one show, and they have one of their rule sets is full vale tudo, bare knuckle, headbutt, stomps, everything. So I immediately write in, hey, I got fighters. My guys are like, sure.
Good to go.
Yep.
And, for me, it's like, yeah, that's what we're about.
Yeah.
We're not out here trying to cherry pick. And, we're trying to be on the path of being the best fighters and the warriors. And honestly, to a degree, kind of living that real Street Fighter 2 life. Traveling the world and being like, who is it?
Yeah.
What's the rule set? Let's go.
Let's go.
It doesn't matter
we're not
what
here
the
to
rules-
lose.
yeah.
What do they say in Australia? You're not here to fuck with spiders. Well, that's what they say.
We try not to. I certainly don't. I hate spiders.
Yeah, not here to fuck with spiders. It's true.
So do you have your own school?
No, I'm not that dumb.
Sorry, that was
Yeah.
hilarious.
It's not always easy.
But you have a team of fighters, and are they in a central location or are they dispersed?
They're in a secret location.
They're in the church basement.
The church basement.
We integrated into California Mixed Martial Arts during the whole COVID thing, and which was easy because the guy who started and runs it, Chad George, is an old friend of mine, and I've coached and he's been a student of mine before too. And he's got a great fight team, and we were always going over there once, maybe twice a week to get sparring in. And and then we didn't have a space to go back to after COVID, so we just stayed there. And now we're just an integrated team, and I help all of his athletes as well. And it's a great environment, and they're churning out some really good fighters, and we have really fantastic talent there.
Are you fighting again?
Not that I know of. The day's not over.
Not today.
Depends what happens down the
Yeah,
pub
that's
later.
right.
I don't know. I don't have any plans for it, but if my body felt better, yeah, I probably would.
Okay.
Just to there's a few things I wouldn't mind adding a few little things to the journey, but if I didn't, actually, I guess maybe part of it, I'd like to say that if I did choose never to fight again, it wouldn't be because it was just physically that held me back. If I could get healthy enough that I felt where I could do full-on training camps the way I like to and then go back into the ring and so on and so forth, then if I make that decision to not fight, at least I still have the capability to do it. Now, I mean, I can still fight. It's just that for the next 4 weeks, are just battered.
Yep.
So for me, it's like, it's just not worth it. And I've got so many other things in motion that when you dedicate to fighting, you can't half-ass it and not expect that to come back and bite you in the ass. So I don't know that I would even have the time per se, but who knows?
But never say never.
No, I
You never know what happens.
right. And truly, if I felt like there was the chance to really go out there and fight and do it within a level that I was, I don't want to say happy with, that sounds so glib, but that I felt was sufficient, like, okay, yeah, for real, then part of me would want to do it just simply because, like I said, you only get to do it for a very small portion of your life. Nobody knows how long that window will be open, but once it closes, it's closed for good. Yeah. So I'd like to get every juice out of that squeeze.
Yeah, fair enough. Well,
Did you ever get nervous going into fights?
No.
really, not ever once. Lie to me. Just say yes.
No, I don't. But see, I'll explain it to you like this. I'm sitting on, well, we're at these stairs, and this guy, he's going to fight in Pride later that night, and he's a big deal. And he looks at me, and he's like, Barnett, do you ever get nervous, man? Nervousness, you feel that? I go, no. He just looked at me, he's like, come on, you don't get nervous before you fight? And I said, no, I don't. For me, I feel like I get to really be who I am. I get to be alive. I get to throw away all the fucking stupid bullshit and massive idiotic garbage that I have to deal with, and shitty people and cowardice and all this stuff in the world. Petty bullshit, and just be me. And, that's my mentality. And he just is like, man, I wish I could be like that. And I said, no, hold on. I didn't say that was the best way to be. That's just the way that I am. You might need to be nervous. You might need to be scared even. I don't know what your best mental place to be before fighting is. But whatever it is, it's yours and it's necessary. So it's not either or. It's not it's not a better or worse. It is specifically, this is just what works. What is who I am versus who you are. But you go out there and you might accomplish things that I never will. But it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is your ability to deploy what you have when it counts.
Is life harder for you outside of the ring than in the ring?
Monumentally.
Just day to day, every day to day, in and out living.
That is probably the strongest reason why a military was an idea, because it's not just the structure, but the idea of being somewhere potentially where all of the bullshit of modernity and and all of it that comes with it is now stripped away, and I'm only dealing with first order things.
Yep.
Sounds great. And my backup plan to if I just really got absolutely fed up with it, I had a small moment where I'm like, I can't do this. This place, I'm so sick of it, was to call people who do private military contracting work and go, do you have some openings?
Yep. After Matt left Defence Force, he went into private contract for a few years as well, because it's so hard to come away from that world and be a civilian. The bullshit that exists.
I can imagine, because it's like some people would rather be fighting for their life than dealing with the regular. And I have never been in combat whatsoever, and I'm not here to say what it is or what it isn't, but when you aren't dealing with the stupid bullshit, oh, you didn't send that piece of paperwork in, or you can't park here between this, and that's like a classic LA fucking meme is, can I park here? Fuck, well, get out your magnifying glass and figure it out. And yet, people will chase you to the ends of the earth over the most mundane, stupid shit. Now, I understand if you want a rules-based order and you want structure and you want things that will operate a certain way, I get it, but it's just, how do you know what really something beautiful is until you've seen something really ugly, or until you've ever had to actually crawl yourself out of something, or be in a place where now those things have a bit more magic and they smell that much more better. And while I'm thankful that I've never had to be in some of the most dire scenarios that I know plenty of people have, I don't stop and smell the roses just because they're there, but I appreciate the fact that they exist at all. And it makes life that much better to me. It's like, it doesn't matter how much other people try to ruin the world, they can never destroy it for me.
That's pretty powerful. So many people would not understand what you just said then, which I think is very sad. But I also think if nothing else, please rewind that and listen to that a few times. Because to have that insight, to have that ability to just go, no, fuckers, fucktards, there it is. You will not take this away from me. Sorry, I have a thing where I have to say fucktards at least once every episode.
Go for it.
It's a joy.
Much to her disgust. But, people will try and take that away from you. At its smallest point, they will try and take that away from you.
Well, and most of the time, they're not even thinking about you. They're only thinking about themselves. And through that comes things that harsh your own life, right? Or the misery they might cause others for what they do to make their own life easier.
Yeah.
Fine, but ultimately, there is a choice, and I'm not saying you don't feel things. I'm not saying stuff. I'm not making that argument. I'm arguing though that the rest of the world still exists. I got to get on a small boat, go through the Adelaide River at the crack of dawn, watch bats fly over my head, knowing that if I fall over, I'm dead.
Yep.
And all in the purpose of spending time with some people that I just got to meet in a place I've never been, to maybe pull a fish out of the water.
Mm-hmm. Life is beautiful.
Sure can be.
You said a second ago that there were a couple of moments where you went, oh, fuck, I'm just done with it. What else, and we talked about military. But what were those moments like, and how did you push through? How did you stay in?
For one, don't let the fuckers win ever. Mm-hmm. Two, it really was more so about the way people operate in, at least in my neck of the world at the time, and their sort of the way that they think it's acceptable at which to act and operate in life. And I just sit back and I don't know how the fuck, I'm not asking you to be the hardest person in the world that, allows no this, no that, with zero margin for anything outside of what is the most necessary and true and honorable. And there are some people that can live that way. And then you get the, I'm not saying you got to be Jocko and get up at 4:45 a.m. and from 4:45 to 5, you eat your meal. And then I'm not saying that. Mm-hmm. But what I am saying is that if you live in a world with no honor, then how do you have any shame? And people can be just so weak in their willingness to actually take a stand for anything that really costs them at all, even if it's just some of their pleasure. And to deal with that and then have it be something that's directly affecting you and something in your life, and you're just like, how can you ever even operate like that? Like, there's nothing about the way you live your world, the way you see how your life should be, that doesn't just burn at you with the nagging, piercing element that if you don't at least, approach something and deal with it and make decisions that are going to be involving cutting certain things away and moving away from it, then who are you? How can you be you're not Switzerland, because you don't produce anything like cuckoo clocks and chocolate and 6 Hour. You're just a spineless little, jellyfish that's just floating around. But yet, you need to have some semblance of having some sort of sense of honor, some sort of boundaries. And it's not about like what you want to go and scream about online. In fact, it's actually what about your relationships with them and this and that? Like, where do you stand? I don't want to take a stand because I don't want to offend them and then not be a part of this. And then I get to be a fucking loser.
Yep.
Yeah.
Harden up.
Wishy-washy people that won't stand for anything.
I get very passionate about things on our episodes sometimes, and I have very low tolerance for that at all.
I kind of have a term for them. I call them the good times people.
Oh, see, I just call them fucktards.
Yeah, sure, but I call them the good times people because when the times are good, they're great, they're amazing, they're wonderful, they're there all the time. And when the times are difficult, where the actual choices have to be made, they never show up. They never really deliver.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask, if you had your time again, let's just say you're 19 today, would you take the same pathway?
Yeah, because I like who I am.
Yeah, but in today's current fight world, how it's structured, how it's set up, that wouldn't change your thought.
Wait, you mean if I was 19 now?
Yes.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't know what that would look like. It's like, what would you do if you didn't do this? Well, that would be a different person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
You've had so many matches, jiu-jitsu matches, as well as, a fight career. What was a standout, really fun fight or fun match for you? Because, you know, it always amazes me how Grant will watch UFC and I watch it too. And you'll see like two guys go toe to toe and they bash each other to an inch of their lives. And then the end of the round comes and they're like, oh, and you just, that was awesome. So did you have those experiences? And if so, what was a really standout one for you?
Well, I mean, all of my fights have essentially been fun to a degree. I know winning the King of Pancrase was a really big thing because my first coach, Matt Hume, he fought in the first King of Pancrase tournament and he lost in the tournament, so he wasn't able to go on. And then 10 years later, I come back around and then I win it. So that was a pretty magic moment. No, he wasn't. But at the same time, I was a newly entered member of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I went and I had all of New Japan Pro Wrestling in my corner pretty much. And I was waving the flag of professional wrestling, which is essentially what was the backbone of Pancrase. It's where it came from. It's where most all of modern MMA stems from. Hell, it's where Brazilian Jiu Jitsu comes from. It's because the elder Gracie Patriarch had a circus, had a carnival, and he had professional wrestling at it. And Mitsuo Maeda came to Japan as Count Koma, or came to Brazil as Count Koma, his pro wrestling persona down there, and competed. And then he stayed, and then he taught the Gracies jiu-jitsu, judo, and catch wrestling. Mm-hmm. And then here we are. So in any case, that was pretty magical for all the connections to lineage and history and everything with it. Plus, you know, the King of Pancrase belt has been worn by some really major who's who in what is mixed martial arts, like Bas Rutten and Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock, Masakatsu Funaki, and Minoru Suzuki, Sem Schilt, ton of guys. But my last bare knuckle fight, yeah, that was a lot of fun. It felt like doing what I got into this to do in the first place.
Just back to the raw basics.
Yeah, like traveling to some foreign land, learn their cultures and customs, eat their cuisine, and beat up their people.
Simple.
Yeah. I hear it's not fun to actually punch a person bare knuckle.
Well, it's fun for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that you'd like. I don't like it.
No, I don't like getting punched. It makes me. I get angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't like to get angry. Often.
Very, very passive. I have a question. So I know that I know a little bit about catch wrestling, and I know that it's different from wrestling. Simplify that for me. What are the major differences between wrestling and catch wrestling?
Think of it this way. Catch wrestling is basically American folk style wrestling with submissions.
Okay, good. But catch wrestling's been around longer than wrestling? Correct.
In fact, American folk style is directly derived from catch as catch can.
Okay.
With the submissions removed.
Okay, so they just removed the submissions.
That's it.
Okay, all right. And it originated from England, right? Catch wrestling.
Well, at least the term. Okay. And the style. So the Lancashire style of wrestling allowed you to continue to work on the floor to find submissions and turnovers. Whereas most what we call indigenous or historical traditional wrestling styles usually are take them from their feet to anything other than their feet touching the ground, you win. Okay. Or it could be take them from their feet to getting them to their back, you win. Mm-hmm. You know, but with catch wrestling, it was you could stay down there. So the next most close equivalent might have been kushti, which is a Indian wrestling style, where you wrestle in the dungals, in the sand pits. And when if you can get a guy to the floor, but if you haven't turned him to his back, you can still stay down there and try to turn him.
Okay. But if you have, then it's done.
Right.
Okay. So, all right. So we've got judo. Mm-hmm. We've got catch wrestling. Mm. We've got wrestling. Mm. We've got boxing. Mm. And we've got jiu-jitsu. Mm. And you wake up tomorrow morning and you can only do one from here on in. Which one are you doing?
Catch wrestling.
Okay. So that's the core of the heart. Why?
It's my lineage, it's what I come from. Although all of my grappling was purpose-built and built around fighting. Mm-hmm. So for me, like the idea of being just a grappler, like, no. It was always about being a fighter. Mm-hmm. Always about having grappling as a part of your fighting repertoire. which is why, I was doing Muay Thai and kickboxing and whatever, right?
Yeah,
it was
all
about
of it,
well-rounding, making a well-rounded.
Mixed martial art.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is also why I train firearms, kali, eskrima, knives, all that.
It's a lot. How do you find time for all the other stuff?
I barely do.
Okay.
Like, I haven't been to the range in forever. And I was just telling my buddy who runs the place, I'm like, look, I intend this year to try and come up more often. Come up on Fridays, get in the work and train under you.
Yep.
And with like sticks and knives, I don't have anybody to train with at the moment, but it just takes a second. Put a stick in my hand and let's go. Like
Yeah.
I figure I keep going.
Okay.
A very good friend of ours is Ray Floro, who does all the Kali stuff, and he's gone overseas and he's taught a lot of the military and things like that. So I have dabbled in Kali just a little bit, but it's fun. It's great fun. Like, it just adds an extra element, and from a self-defense point of view, knowing that you can pick something up and use it to help keep yourself safer as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, the one thing that always has to remain is if you don't do things with live sparring, it doesn't count.
Yep.
It just doesn't count. But if you're doing it properly, you can always find a stick or a knife. So it's a great self-defense art in that sense.
How do you feel, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, when you first started, it was a very male-centric world, right? There wasn't a lot of female fighters.
Has it not become a male-centric world still?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think
by
there's
the
more
way,
females now.
Of course, but as you create anything, it can draw more people as it becomes more accepted.
Yeah.
Look, in something like combat sports, especially in its infancy, it is not going to bring females to it. It's just generally women's proclivities are not going to be towards that kind of an athletic endeavor.
Yeah.
It's why no matter how long basketball, let's say, has been around, there's not as many female basketball players as male basketball players in the world at all. There's not, and then you could, you'll argue, well, if it's Iran, then, okay, yeah. But let's distill it down to just the West. There's still not as many female basketball players as male basketball players. And everyone wants to come up with, women don't want to play basketball to the degree that men do.
Yeah.
Which is okay. That's the thing that always kills me. It's like, no, it's this, it's that, it's systemic. Look, isn't it okay if people don't want to do something, if they're not driven to do something to the same manner as which somebody else is? Isn't that fine? Well, that basketball player makes this and they get the shoes. Like, fuck. Oh, is that the reason to play basketball? Yeah. So the only reason that it's a problem is because you need more women to be famous for playing basketball and rich. And it's like, fucking... Okay. A woman could do something the least basketball related that could be the coolest fucking thing in the world and make them... Why isn't that enough?
Yep.
And why does she have to be reduced to what she hasn't done instead of what she has done?
But how excited are you now? Because I noticed you said before that you had a female student and she went round. So fast forward a few years and you have a couple of daughters. Are they getting into this and are you backing it and are you good with that?
If they want to be fighters, sure, but they're all going to wrestle. As a scholastic sport, they all have to wrestle, whether they be women or male. You have to wrestle.
Why?
Because nothing else available to children in the scholastic setting delivers anything close to what wrestling does. Straight up. Nothing will. And you're not going to be as good at defending yourself with softball or tennis. Well, you get the racket and the bat. Yeah, but you don't have the will to use it.
So our three daughters, for them, it's Jiu Jitsu. But it's Jiu Jitsu and it's mandatory until they're 18 and then they can choose. And it's the only thing in their world between music and other things and all the rest of it. It is the one thing that we make mandatory.
A person should be a well-rounded individual. You should be physical as well as mental, as well as spiritual. And you can call music as far as spiritual, not just mental. Absolutely. So you should be expressing yourself in all ways, but it must be physical as well.
Yep. I think that's super important. We were just talking, and this conversation, it's come up so many times in the last week or two, but I started in Jiu Jitsu about 18 years ago. And we were talking about how the training mat was very different back then to what it is now. On that time, there was a lot of guys who were dappling or trying to earn careers in MMA. And so you'd go on as like a little white belt female and tap hands, bump fists, and look, they were lovely and they'd look after you. They'd look after me.
Yep.
But the training room was harder. It was about winning on the mat that night and things like that. Whereas it seems the evolution has become, now we have this mentality that our training partner is the most important person in the room, and it's about the technique, not about winning the mat on the night and things like that. So in what ways have you seen huge changes from when you started to now?
People don't really want to fight like they used to. They want to be famous. They want to get glory. They want to be cool. They want to, but they don't really want. They don't have the same fighting will that those of us that started off when there was no direct path and it was just like show up and get some. They just don't have that mentality. I mean, I was on a phone on a. We used to do these conference call things for prior to UFCs, and you'd have different journalists on the line asking a small amount of us fighters different questions. And it was something like that. And I talked about like, look, man, like when I was fighting, for me, it was like, okay, what are the rules? Do we headbutts or no headbutts or this or that? Let's go. All right. We're good to do it. $500. I've never made that much money. Fantastic. And one of the fighters on the call is like, yeah, I would never do. I'm good. I would never do that. That would just sounds insane. I wouldn't want to go out there and bare knuckle, headbutt each other in the face. And like, no, thanks. And like, he wasn't saying it to be trite, or he really meant that. He's like, no, that's not that. I
don't want to be that hurt.
But me, I do. Yeah. That was what I wanted. And I understand that mentality. And yes, the rooms are a lot softer, but what you need to do is you just need to create harder barriers. So if you're going to run Jiu Jitsu or MMA schools or whatever the martial arts school may be for civilians, then you have your civilian side of things. But then when it comes to I want to compete, you go, do you? Like, to what level? To what end? How much do you think it takes me to invest into you to get that, to make that happen? So
that's a massive point, though, because it's not just turn up twice a week then.
And for me, it's like, look, my fighters, look, if you want to be like, well, I'll do this, but I don't want to do that. It's like, bye.
Yep.
You're not made for this. And how do I know my fighters will go out and do it like that event potentially in Japan? Why I didn't even have to sit and ask? It was because it was an amateur fight, and we're sitting there, and this kid, so I'd already written the promoter ahead of time because amateur MMA is something I have a big bone to pick with, but that's not a euphemism. And
I didn't think it was.
It's that a lot of these promoters try to promote amateur MMA as like fake pro. So after a certain amount of fights, you can pull the shin guards off. And then I'm like, why? Nobody's getting paid. Like, why do I care? If my guy couldn't drop you with low kicks with shin guards on, then it's him, not the guards. And I don't need him getting laced in the eye with a shin or something. Now he's cut. Now I can't. I'd rather him fight this weekend, next weekend. I want to keep people active. But the promoters like to just advertise just fights.
Because then it becomes about money, right?
Of course. And look, I'm a promoter too, so I understand all the arguments on both sides. But I think there's a way of going about it that's honest and true, and that is more moral and sincere in ways that aren't. So anyways, I'd been talking to the promoter. He's like, well, hey, okay, for this match, he's already had over the X amount of fights, so, do it without shin guards. I go, no, my guys don't fight without shin guards. It doesn't matter how many fights they've had. I want to keep them active and busy, and there's no point. We're not making money, so we don't care. Well, we're going to film some of these fights, but, then he won't get, and we'll put it on, I don't know, whatever, YouTube or this or that. And I'm like, well, then, his fight won't get shown. I go, I don't care. That's not the point.
They've missed the point on why you're there.
Okay, so I worked this all out. We show up on the day. A commission guy for the California California Amateur Martial Arts, Mixed Martial Arts Association or organization shows up. And he's like, and I'm like, look, dude, shin guards is a choice. If one fighter wants to fight without shin guards, but the other one doesn't, then they both have to wear them. only if both agree. And I'm explaining him his own statutes. And he's like, okay. And then the promoter is bugging me again. I'm like, come on, dude. And he's saying, oh, well, the team next door, you know, they're this, that, and they're talking about maybe they won't fight. And I go, okay. And I'm wrapping one of my other fighters' hands, the female fighter's hands, before she's going to go and do her amateur fight. Now I'm getting pissed because I already handled this. And now this is just disrespectful. And now you're intruding in on my time with my athletes, which is very important to me. So I'm just sitting there and I'm like, well, if this guy thinks he's such Billy Badass and he's got to be so fucking tough that he can't, God forbid, he fights with shin guards on, why don't we do it like I did? Hey, Johnny, how about this? Johnny being my, actually, I go, okay, we'll do. We don't want, he's so tough, how about this? No shin guards, no knee pads, no gloves, wraps only, no biting, no eye gouging, no hair pulling, no scratching. Let's go. We can stick with the same minute round. We can go 10-minute, or we can just go open time. We'll go. Johnny, is that good with you? Yep. Well, you tell him we'll do it that way if he wants. If he's such a badass and these shin guards are such an impeding on his ability to compete, and they're all just looking at me like, okay. We get out there. We finally get to the ring. We're at the shin guards on. They accept. We look, Victor Henry looks across the corner and he's eyeballing because he's a street kid, man. That kid, he knows every fucking little gimmick. He knows how people are going to try and flim-flam something. So he looks over and he goes to the commissioner that's in our corner and goes, hey, he's got his shin guard spun. Let's go adjust him. And the guy's over in the corner, he sits down, he gives Johnny the double bird. And I'm like, all right. I go, Johnny, fucking flatline this guy. He goes out there, ding, ding, boom, puts him on the floor, bah, 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 boom, TKO. And it's just like, it's like, you didn't even fucking kick. Fuck you.
His legs didn't get off the ground.
Yeah. But this is also the same team where we're like, we've all got folded up rolls of tape or our mouthpieces on us. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you want to go after this, like we're throwing tape on, we're mouthpieces in, we're going to fucking take you apart.
Yeah. But did they all take 3 really big steps back after they saw the first fight and just decide that maybe that's not what they're going to do?
This guy, I never even saw this guy compete in amateur in the camo ever again. Yeah. I never even saw anything of it. It's just like, fuck that kid for just being an idiot and for no reason.
Yep.
Didn't matter.
Yeah, it's all egocentric at that point, though.
It was.
Yep, 100%. So what's next for you?
Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 13, my pro wrestling show I do in
that's
WrestleMania week in April.
Year? Yep.
No, this year.
Oh, sorry, this year.
How's still living in 2024?
I have 2 athletes competing in a catch wrestling tournament tomorrow, so I'll be keeping track of that in Vegas. I've got working on hosting.
Bloodsport's in Vegas this year too, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm working on hosting more ACWA catch wrestling tournaments in America, taking the team over to the Snake Pit in Wigan for their show, their World Wigan? Championship. In Lancashire area. It's the home, it's basically where Catch Can comes from.
And
it's related to the original Snake Pit of Billy Riley and everything. Oh, wow. So there's that. There's
that's all happening this year?
Yeah. Okay. Possibly Victor Henry should be fighting in the UFC hopefully soon. Working on something there. Going back to Japan, teaching the New Japan Pro Wrestling students more. More stuff with Warbringer Whiskey. Yeah, plenty. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Yeah.
That's a lot of balls you're juggling.
Good thing I'm born for that. have a pair of my own.
Been doing it from a baby.
Yeah. Comes natural to me at this point.
And you do have a fiance. Mm-hmm. And how does she with all this? When does she get time with Josh?
Every night.
Is she here in Australia too?
No. Sometimes she's able to travel with us, or with me, I should say, but not this trip. And these trips can be really difficult because I did one similar in Ireland, but it was just like bam, 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 bam. Yeah. It's just not conducive for her to be able to work on the road or, for us to really have any real downtime. She could go off and wander all on her own if she had wanted to, but it's just not as easy to make happen. And that's fine. But, everything I do, I try to do to build towards things for the future. And that's what it comes down to. But it's awesome when she's able to travel with me. And I guess you made mention of holiday, I guess. So, like, last time I was in Poland, I deliberately add another week to the itinerary so that we could then go to the Czech Republic and do stuff. And then since we were already being flown over, I said, just set my return flight out of here at this date.
Yep.
Okay, done. And then we take care of the rest of it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So it's been great. She loves going to Japan. Has loved that. Europe has been fantastic. And she's awesome. She really supports this. She didn't know anything about fighting before meeting me and was totally fine with it.
How did you two meet?
Instagram.
Oh, cool. Really?
Yeah. We had a lot of similar friends. And I guess we just came across each other's, profile or whatever, and our pages, and got to conversing. And then I didn't meet her for like 3 months. I spoke to her on the phone all the time and texted, and we had conversations. And that was funny. The first time I ever called her, I said, give me your number. After like a few little bit, and I pull her up. And she's just like,
hi.
Hello? Like, well, yeah, I'm trying to get to know who you are. So, yeah.
And it's been, are there wedding plans in play?
Oh, yeah.
This year as well?
Hopefully in October if possible. But, oh, man, we haven't even got down to figuring out what the list is going to look like. So.
Oh, wow.
Has she gone back and watched some of your fights?
Probably. I would never ask her about that kind of thing.
And does she train at all?
No.
No?
Other than like every now and again I'll put the boxing gloves on her, and either I'll make her do some stuff, or mostly what I'll do is I'll just I show up, if we're working out together or something in the backyard, and put the gloves on her and just put my mouthpiece in and go ahead, hit me in the face. And I just move and slip and do whatever, and she's like, if you can hit me in the face, that's my fault, not yours.
Fair enough. Has she ever?
No.
There's going to come a day.
I'm okay with that. I've been hit. So, but I'm thinking I want her to, I'm not really trying to teach her to be a boxer. I'm just trying to get her to throw a punch and have a good time while she's doing it.
Yeah. And move a little bit too, right? And just have a little taste of it. Well, you know what? For the wedding in October, if you get there and you make it on time, congratulations. And I hope it's beautiful and magical and everything you'd want it to be.
Yeah, me too.
Will it be a Viking wedding?
Bill will, that is actually part of it. I mean, at least I have researched Viking rites and things around weddings. Yeah, some of it.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so stalking you around October.
Awesome. Well, mindful of time.
Yep. You've got to drive to Sydney and get on the road and everything.
We do have one thing that we do at the end of every episode.
We do. So we have an acronym called HOPE, and it's help one person every day. And it's what we teach our children. It's what we talk about every time on episodes, etc. And what we do on the end of the episode is we just ask everybody to think about what is the one thing they hope everybody takes away from the episode that they've just listened to. And so, and we do it every episode. So, my love, what is your hope for the listeners with us today, listening in on Josh's story?
Based on today's experience, you're a phenomenal coach, and we thoroughly loved everything that you brought to Iconic today, and the way that you articulate, and the way that you teach, and you have some similarities to way Grant teaches, and in that way, in presenting. If you have the opportunity to ever learn from Josh Barnett, go take it by both hands, because we learnt so much, but the stories that you told and the way that you deliver and the way that you coach, you just made it so easy for all levels. And we had all levels on the mats this morning. Yep. So you don't need to be a black belt or you don't need to be a catch wrestler. You can be
a beginner of all of it.
That's it. And we did actually have one person that is not a jiu-jitsu guy and is not a wrestling guy. He does judo, and he came in today from another school and learnt from you. And, I think take the opportunity. One thing that my coach always would say is that he learnt his lesson when he had an opportunity to go and train and learn with some people, and he was like, oh no, I'll catch them next time. And then that next time never came. So take the opportunity while you can when it presents itself in front of you, go do it. That would be my hope for the listeners today.
Nice. My hope would be, and I'm going to stick with it, and I say it often, but if you got nothing out of today, my hope is that you understand the importance of putting your kids into wrestling, judo, Jiu Jitsu, catch wrestling, whatever it is, listening to your story, taking it from a child through to an adult. And I'm not saying that I hope mums and dads, force their kids into a career path of it. What I'm saying is that there is a mindset that comes with being in martial arts as well. This is not thuggery. There is so much more to the choice of martial arts. For us, it's Jiu Jitsu. But there is so much more to this that kids can explore and understand, and they will take from it. So understand that. Please understand the depths of what a martial arts can give kids. And if you're not already letting your kids train, put them in somewhere. That's my hope. Always. What's your hope, Josh?
My hope? You know what? Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to go out there and put your neck on the line and step forward, and look foolish, and have people call you stupid and whatever. There are people that have a certain wisdom that are correct, and maybe you were stupid. But the majority of folks that are going to get from the P gallery or whatever, they're going to sit there and they're going to scream and they're going to yell, but they're doing it because they're trying to belittle you instead of because you actually tried to do something that they were too afraid to do themselves. So go out there and forge something for yourself, for your reasons, and do it with all sincerity, and you'll never have done something that wasn't worthwhile.
That's pretty awesome. Thank you. Well, look, I got to say, first, sorry. March 22nd.
Yes.
Subversion.
We do. We have an amazing fight show in Australia for Jiu Jitsu.
We do.
And it's Subversion. It's March 22. You know where to buy your tickets. It's moshtix.com.au. Go down there. Support these promotions that are supporting the sport that you're in.
Absolutely.
That is the most important thing. And if you cannot make it there in person, watch them on Flow Grappling. You'll get to hear Grant commentate. You'll get to see some amazing matches on the night. There are some huge names on this card. It is really the number one show in all of Australia, and as they said on the podcast recently, top 5 in the world.
Yeah, that's it.
So,
and come down and hang with us. If you get down there, come and say hi to us, especially
absolutely.
If you've booked the tickets, because we're letting you know and reminding you March 22nd.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
As always, if you like what you hear.
Yep. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things, give us the 5 stars, and slide into our DMs and let us know what you'd like to hear about next. So
and who would you like to hear from? Who can we seek out?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for coming on to the podcast today. There's all kind of booby traps everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you, beautiful lady.
Thank you, honey.
It was all pleasure as always.
Always is. Josh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It has been a pleasure, and I stand by it. You are so smart. I could listen to you for hours. I really could. So please come back and join us again if you hit Australia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Safe travels home.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. See you next
See you
week.
guys. See you next week, honey.
Bye.
This podcast is a My Broken Soldier production.
And brought to you by Iconic Jiu Jitsu.